So after years of delays and a few controversies, Dying Light 2 Stay Human is finally here, and here is everything you need to know. Make sure you like if you want to see more, and go and check out the rest of my Dying Light guides and tutorials that are going to be coming out over the next few days. Let's go. Story and consequences have been talked up for years by techland, saying that your choices will matter and they'll affect the environment around you. So how does that actually translate to gameplay? Well, you'll have this city alignment. At certain points throughout the game, you're going to have to choose to either restore power for the peacekeepers or the survivors, the two main factions in the game. There is a third faction, the renegades, but they're kind of like the general bad guys. You won't really be making any choices that affect the gameplay like you do with these. So every time you either supply water or electricity to a region, you then get to choose where you want to side. Side with the survivors, and that region suddenly comes littered with parkour equipment that you can jump on, use vents to get up to higher places better, and a whole bunch more. And in this instance, you'll also have the ability to drink water to help heal you at various times all throughout the city. Peacekeepers also get water, but you get a whole bunch of traps and alarms that can set off zombies so that you can lure them away and distract them. Each choice you make gives you the ability to get new traps or new ways to move around the map, so it's definitely a thing of building up over time, and these do get applied to every region that is either peacekeeper or survivor. Something that's not immediately clear in the first maybe 10 hours is that you will get access to a bow, but there are no firearms other than a consumable shotgun that breaks after 2 uses. You can get a semi-automatic crossbow, but you do need to side with the peacekeepers up to level 4 before you can unlock it. But it's totally possible to go ahead and side with the peacekeepers up to that point, and then put all the rest of your decisions towards the survivors if you really want. And of course it will affect the end of the game. You'll get different results based on what faction you've aligned with, but it does look like there's more weight towards the final choices rather than some of the stuff that you encounter during the way. You'll just get different cutscenes with different characters, but it generally leads all back to the middle. These choices that pop up, you only get a limited amount of time to make them, and sometimes you don't get much warning or consequences of what's going to happen, so it's a bit of a potluck. Peacekeepers are a little bit more like the official sort of faction, the police, the military. They've got orders and you've got to follow them. Then the survivors are a little bit more free thinking. They can do what they want, but they're not as organised sometimes. One thing I do know, the hordes of zombies aren't as big as they were in the first game. You do get a few that will come and get you, or the certain points where you'll find lots, but otherwise it's much more smaller contained groups. So I don't know if all the traps that you can access eventually with the peacekeepers are necessarily going to be super useful in the early stages at least. For me personally, I've been having much more fun doing parkour and running around, so I would absolutely go for more of the survivor stuff so that I can get access to airbags and special ways to get around the map a little bit quicker and easier too. The environments do change when you make these decisions, but it's a little bit, I would say, weak sauce. The factions effectively set up new camps in and around the area, and you get more opportunities to trade with different traders and a few other stores or NPCs. When it comes to the map itself, you'll be contained in one area at first before gaining access through a tunnel to the second stage, and that's going to take a good amount of time. You then have to go through serious missions and of course lots of side quests as you would expect. Getting around the map and finding them side quests or main missions is definitely one of its selling points to me. The parkour is so much more improved than the first one. It does feel a bit floaty at times, but once you get used to it, you really do feel like you're continuously in motion, especially when you start unlocking some new skills. Speaking of skills, there are 2 distinct paths. You've got combat XP and then you've got parkour XP. You'll get combat XP for using just obviously your bats, weapons, axes and more, but using it in a bit more creative way. Setting up chains where you're jumping over or dodging enemies gives you more XP, and that eventually will reward you with combat point. Likewise with the parkour, if you want to get more XP to your next level, then making sure you're running chains. Maintaining a good run and keeping that chain going is important to increase your XP. Some of the skills are locked behind levels to do with your health or stamina, and to increase your health and stamina you need to find inhibitors. These are containers you'll find in special chests or as rewards for completing side missions and certain main story beats. You need 3 of them to go ahead and upgrade either your stamina or your health, and that in turn then means you can unlock new skills once you've got parkour points or combat points that you've built up with XP. You do get a ton of XP obviously by completing missions and side quests, and a whole bunch of world events also reward you with either parkour XP or combat XP. The highest level that you need your stamina or health to be to get the final skills is 260 at the moment, unless they design or try to add any more. So that would mean you need to upgrade your health to level 260. And so far, each upgrade that you use inhibitors does increase it by 20. But that does seem like quite a lot, as there are 40 upgrades eventually that you can actually get. Although they will be a bit scattered, so I'm guessing it'd have to be a real mission to find every single one of them. Your overall level is actually going up a bit slower, and I do believe the max is 6. You can see it's number 1 in the top right that I'm building towards right now, and this pretty much just affects the types of enemies. So you'll go into zones that will be zombies at level 4 or NPC renegades at level 3, and that means you should really be around that level before taking them on, or make sure that you're absolutely a badass with the weapons you've got. One thing I've not established yet is whether or not the max level of 6 stops you gaining XP, because if that's the case, then you may be limited in terms of what skills you can get rather than being able to buy every single one. But I will clarify that in a future video where I'll talk more in depth about the skills, ranking them and which ones you should unlock first. Combat is extremely gory and you can't really turn it off, but you can change the HUDs to turn off all the markers to make it a little bit more immersive. So if you're not a big fan of health bars on top of Zed's heads, then yeah, you can turn that off. In terms of combat, obviously it is melee focused. Like I said, there are no firearms in the game. Not serious ones anyway. A bit disappointing is that you're not able to also craft new weapons. Instead, you'll find a huge amount in the world, but you can go ahead and then modify them by adding elemental effects to them that you'll buy from traders. And so far, there generally seems to be only 2 types of weapon. It's either blunt damage or slash damage. Like I said, in the first sort of 10 to 15 hours at least. So things like maces, big hammers, they're going to do blunt damage, and then you've got axes and machetes, and they're going to do slash. You'll find plenty of weapons all throughout the world, and you can obviously go ahead and buy some from merchants as well. And generally, a lot of them have free slots for modifications. And they also come in a bunch of rarities from the previous game, from rare, uncommon, all the way up to gold. Now you can modify your weapons at any time yourself, but you'll find craft masters where you can also go and buy and upgrade weapons. You can increase the overall output of weapons, but you need to turn in zombie tokens. Basically every time you kill certain zombies, you'll get rewarded with either uncommon zombie tokens or rare ones, and you need a bunch of these to go ahead and upgrade. This is at the moment the only way that you can also repair weapons. It does seem like you'll be going through a lot of them, they will break, but none of them are really as unique as the weapons that you found in the first game. Each time you modify a weapon, it increases its durability, but again, it will obviously go down, and there's only a certain amount of times that you can go ahead and mod your weapons. So if you really like a weapon and you want to keep it, then obviously you're going to make sure you're going to be upgrading it, and that's the only way to stop it from actually losing its durability, breaking. Once it's broke, that's it. It gets discarded. You won't be able to pick it back up and take it with you or repair it or do anything else. You'll also come across other blueprints for consumables and accessories that can also be upgraded and crafted yourself. Things like UV lights or Molotov cocktails. And as I said, these can all be upgraded, but you are going to need maybe also gold to do this, and a whole bunch of them zombie tokens. Some of the zombie tokens you have to kill specific zombies to get hold of the rarest ones, and that might mean invoking something like volatiles chasing you. But generally you will come across little markers that indicate a zombie that is more of a rare one is nearby, and you can go ahead and hopefully get the ones that you need. A big part of the game now is that you are infected once more, and this time you have to take immunity boosters to go ahead and suppress it. There's a number in the middle that pops up, and at the start it's around 4 minutes to 5 minutes that you'll be able to go out at night without having to run into a UV zone or using one of your consumables to give you some more time. If you go into certain buildings, this also decreases that time or starts it off even during the day, and there are certain zones with elemental factors that also reduce how much immunization you've got. So it basically means you've got to be quick when you're going through these places, obviously avoiding zombies and making sure you've got enough equipment or consumables to clear out some of these dungeons. But as said, a lot of the buildings that you go in, they will obviously start up the dark mode, and that means you've only got that limited time before you need to take them. You will find a whole bunch of these blue mushrooms out in the world and in tunnels, and you can eat these directly to help give you that time, or eventually you'll be able to craft them into much longer lasting immunization boosts. And of course there's a whole bunch of other boosts that you can get, either to your stamina, to your health, or to your general attacks. And if you're not a big fan of foraging, well, you can always go ahead and just buy them from lots of traders once you get lots of gold. When it comes to gold, you're going to need a lot of it. Obviously, coins are what make the world go round, and you'll find plenty of valuables that you can go and sell. You'll find these in all sorts of lootable places, and certain places have more loot than others. If you want a bunch of trinkets to go and actually get gold coins, then you need to go and hit some of the dark hollows. These are buildings covered in blue sort of precipices and stuff, and they'll be filled with zombies obviously during the day, but at night time they empty out and make it a little bit easier to go and get the loot inside. And you often also get inhibitors and other good loot too. Whereas the Forsaken stores, they offer the better chance of getting crafting materials. And same thing again, during the day and during the night it's very different. At night time it's actually easier to go into these places. It is a lot easier to stay out of trouble at night time. I found in the first game I was always offsetting some sort of chase sequence with the volatiles, but in this one you really have to work hard at it. You also get a 2x multiplier for doing anything at night time, so either parkour or combat, that also increases. So it's definitely worth adventuring more out at night than maybe you did in the first one. Chases are back of course, and they do increase in level and difficulty if you don't actually get away, but you can also escape not just in UV zones, that will stop the chase from happening, but also hide in low rushes and even under tables and stuff sometimes. You'll find plenty of these UV zones, and you'll also need to use them because your timer does go down and you need to get into one to replan it. You do have to activate some of them yourself though, so it does add a little bit of emergency to stuff if you've been waylaid or you're doing a side mission and you've forgotten the time of day. Each upgrade that you do with your health or your stamina does increase the amount of time that you get for your immunisation as well though. The map is absolutely huge, it's filled with lots of side quests and stuff, too much for me to cover really in just this little video. And as I said, there's various points where you need to activate things like windmills to set up extra safe zones and maybe even trading outposts. They showed off a big amount of the sort of parachute or paraglider in the game trailers, but you don't really unlock that until a bit later in the game, maybe about 7 hours if you're doing nothing but story possibly. I've yet to unlock the grapple hook myself, but from what I can tell you don't actually get it until maybe near the end of the game, and it's more of a kind of special use item rather than something that you can just be Batman whenever you want. You'll find plenty of NPCs of course, and like I said, side missions or events, and sometimes some really stupid stuff like these guys. But a really great way to get lots of XP is by completing these little rescue missions. You basically have to give a consumable over, he'll give you a consumable back as long as he doesn't die, and you'll get a whole ton of XP for parkour or combat. A lot of the zombies do make their return from the first game, as well as the volatiles, although a lot of them have had some minor changes added. And yeah, there are a few brand new zombie types, although not as many as I kind of maybe would have thought. Some of them will be obviously in special zones that if you take them out you can then go ahead and get a whole bunch of unique loot, or more importantly inhibitors. Screamers are back in some way or shape or variety, and they'll alert other zombies to your presence. Even during the day it can still be a bit dangerous wandering around the streets, so sometimes the rooftops are still your best bet to stay mostly out of trouble. There is lockpicking galore, easy, medium and hard, but you can upgrade your lockpicks so that it makes it a bit easier to get through them. Otherwise good luck turning all your scrap into some of these just to open one door. At lots of hideouts and outposts you can go ahead and access your stash. There is a limit to how many weapons that you can hold, although it's pretty generous. I think it was something like 24, maybe more than that, as well as your armour. And you can access these stashes at any time and they'll be shared all throughout the world. When it comes to the armour, you're meant to have kind of 4 classes: Brawler, Tank, Medic and Ranger. And they'll mostly have the same sort of attributes or stat buffs that increase either your damage output, how much parkour XP you can earn, how much combat XP you can get. So it's meant to suit your playstyle. If you like using one-handed weapons, then you're going to go for the class that gives you more one-handed damage, etc. Don't worry, I've got a separate video taking a look at all the classes and whether or not it really actually matters, because I've got to say in the first sort of 10 hours I've never really noticed a huge difference when I've gone for something explicitly for Medic or Ranger. The game really wants you to lean into the combat and evasive moves. Basically when you unlock a skill, use it. Whether or not you're fighting zombies, using it to then jump over one or block a perfect timed attack and then take out more, you'll get lots more XP. I do find with the zombies it's harder to parry their attacks and it's more about just dodging out of the way. You can always thin out the crowd by using some of your consumables. You get grenades, Molotov cocktails as I mentioned, And just going over a little bit more to do with the modifications for your weapons, then of course you can apply fire damage to some of your weapons as well as lightning or poison. And some of the mods do need to be activated to get their full effect, just like this one with a fire blast mod. You will find more sort of special weapons, but they're not as unique as they used to be in the first game. Last few things to point out are stuff like bandit camps. Well, in the first stages you will be directed here by the story, so don't necessarily go and clear it out. And also a little FYI, because of the mistake I made, at a lot of these bandit camps supposedly there's lots of environmental stuff that you can do to basically take out the leaders. I wasn't paying enough attention and I just went all in guns blazing, but that's what the blurb says. You can look out for stuff that will basically do the job for you. You also convert these bandit outposts to whatever faction or whatever part of the story you're with, and that does mean that you'll lose a lot of the loot that's inside. So once you've taken out a bandit outpost, do go and check inside the buildings that you've got all the loot you can. As you saw there, human NPCs also try and bring reinforcements sometimes and alert others, so make sure you take out any that have got a horn on top of their head. And that's about it for this video. There's a whole bunch more I could talk about, but they're all coming in separate little videos, giving you a heads up what to expect with side quests. I do find the humour in a lot of them is actually much more funny than I thought it was going to be. The rewards aren't always as great though for some of the stuff that I've come across so far. Except for XP for parkour and combat, etc. That's what you're really looking for, in my opinion, when you're going to do side quests or missions, rather than what kind of other weapons or armor pieces you get, as you just come across so many ways to get that from traders and out in the world. So the map is absolutely huge. This is only the first section and it branches off massively, although you won't be able to access that until you go through some of the story beats and gain access through a tunnel. There are a whole bunch of parkour challenges that you'll get to unlock. Some of these though you are going to need definitely some more skills to really get the best times, and likewise some of the other side events like unlocking some of the windmills do require a certain stamina level before you can access them too. So if you do want a bit of a break from combat, there is plenty to do with the parkour side of things. As with most open world games, do the main missions to get the most XP. Don't pass up on the opportunity to rescue survivors to get small mounts, and look out for special zombies so you can get them tokens, as you're going to need a lot of them to upgrade your mods for your weapons. Or the weapons themselves. Hopefully in the future we'll get class loadout options that we can actually toggle at any one time, and it does look like costumes are a thing, as I have seen a box where you can apply a certain costume, so I'm guessing that's going to come a bit later in my game. Hope you found that useful. Go and check out the rest of the content. I'll be covering Dying Light massively for the next few weeks. Until next time, ratbags, laters.